Hello, students. Welcome to the online lecture series organized by Gokhale Education Society's BYK College of Commerce, Nashik. In this video, we are going to deal with poetry section. Poem 2.5 Father Returning Home by Dilip Chitre. Presented by Mrs. Sharda Nagargoche, Department of English, BYK College of Commerce, Junior College Unit. Father Returning Home by Dilip Chitre is a biographical sketch of the poet's father. The title of the poem indicates that the poet is talking about the monotonous routine of his father and having no connections with either the outside world or even his family, and suppresses his emotions as there is no one with whom he can share them. So, the title of the poem is suitable and appropriate. Let us have some information about the poet. Dilip Chitre was a celebrated bilingual poet and translated with a remarkable work in Marathi and English. His versatile creativity extends to painting, filmmaking, and his notable contribution as a magazine columnist. He received the prestigious Sahitya Academy Award both for poetry as well as for his well known translation work, says Tuka. Popular abhangs means spiritual poems by Saint Tukaram. He had started translation of literary work of saints in Marathi at the age of 16. Exile, alienation, self integration, and death are observed to be the major themes of his works. Let us see the central idea of the poem. The central idea of this poem is modern man's alienation from the man made world. This world is full of hurry and worry. Nobody has the time to take interest in others. The senior citizens are neglected lot in society. The poem gives us a picture of sad old man who travels to work by local train every day in the city of Mumbai. He does not feel comfortable at home in his environment. He feels lonely even in a crowd. His isolation is seen in his inability to have dialogue with his family or friends. He feels uneasy in his present. So the old man enters into the distant world of the past or into the touch world of his own dreams. The modern man is alienated in a complex urban world. Let us see the line by line discussion of the poem. Father returning home. My father travels on the late evening train, standing among silent commuters in the yellow light. Suburbs slide past his unseeing eyes. My father travels on the late evening train. The poem begins with the speaker's description of his father traveling home by train. The father is traveling in a late evening train after finishing his work for the day. Late evening train may indicate how long the father works so that it regularly gets that the late for him to return home. Standing among silent commuters in the yellow light. The father is standing among the silent passengers in the yellow light inside the train compartment. This line is indicative of his sufferings during the journey. After working so hard, he is returning home standing on the footboard as he doesn't get a seat there to relax. The silent commuters are not friendly enough to converse with him or among themselves. The yellow light is not the best thing either to promote any cheerfulness. All these things further intensify his agony and make the journey monotonous. Suburbs slide past his unseeing eyes. The suburbs are sliding past the moving train, but the poet's father has no intention to look at those. He is unmoved by these scenes, for he has seen them many times and finds nothing new in it. His shirt and pants are soggy, and his black raincoat, stained with mud, and his bag stuffed with books, is falling apart. Now the poet makes us know that it was a rainy day. His father's dresses are all wet with the rainwater, and the black raincoat is damaged with mud. The bag he was carrying was filled with books, and he was struggling to handle it. These lines are again indicative of the difficulties poet's father has to face during his journey. It gets even worse in the rainy season. The black raincoat might indicate the lack of color in his dull life. Again, his bag is full of books, hints that he was an educated and scholarly man, not that unimportant that one would think from his ordinary routine journey. His eyes, dimmed by age, fade homeward through the humid monsoon night. Now the poet gives us an impression of his father's age. His eyesight is dimmed by his old age. The father looks homeward with his low vision through the humid monsoon night. The gloomy atmosphere also adds to the dullness of his life. Now I can see him getting off the train, like a word dropped from a long sentence. The poet's father gets down from the train. Here, the poet Dilip Chitre has used a fine simile in comparing his father to an unimportant word in a long sentence. This is quite unique. He says that his father gets down just like a word dropped from a long sentence. The poet indicates how unimportant his father is to the crowd in the train. It does not really make any difference whether he got down or not. He is not that relevant to the rest of the world. He hurries across the length of the grey platform, crosses the railway line, enters the lane. After getting off the train, the father hurries towards his home. He crosses the grey platform and the railway line and finally enters in the lane. He is sticky with mud chappals, can't prevent him hurrying onward. His chappals are sticky with mud, but he hurries onward. The poet has used the word hurries twice to bring in a sense of escapism from the dull, humid atmosphere, grey platform, and muddy streets where no one would care for him. He just wants some solace at his own home. Home again, I see him drinking weak tea, eating a stale chapati, reading a book. The second stanza of the poem, Father Returning Home, begins here. In this stanza, the poet depicts the isolation of his father in his own home. The poet sees his father reach home again like the other days. Then he sees him drink weak tea and eat a stale chapati. The poet finds that how nobody cares for him even at home. But the man does not have any complaint with his tea or food as he is used to it, though the food was not nutritious. As we see, he rather concentrates on reading a book while having his tea. He has probably given up on expecting more care from his family members. He goes into the toilet to contemplate man's coming out. He trembles at the scene. the cold water running over his brown hands. The father comes out from the toilet and goes to wash basin to wash his hands. The speaker observed him trembling at the sink when cold water was running down on his brown hands. His trembling might be due to his old age, the coldness of water, and also the fearful thought of his isolation from the rest of the world. A few droplets cling to the graying hair on his wrist. A few drops of water clinging to the gray hair on his wrist may have some greater implication. Water generally symbolizes life, and gray hair stands for old age. So the old man's life is just holding on to his old age. This life has no signification to anyone else. His sullen children have often refused to share jokes and secrets with him. He will go to sleep. Now the poet goes on to talk about the old man's relationship to his family members. His bad tempered children refuse to share jokes and secrets with him. They don't want to share a close and friendly association with their father. Rather, they regard him as an outdated, unwanted burden, though he seems to be only earning member of family. Listening to the static on the radio, dreaming of his ancestors and grandchildren, thinking of nomads entering a subcontinent through a narrow pass. We are in the final stage of the poem, where we see the father going to sleep listening to the radio and thinking of many things like his ancestors, his grandchildren, and of the Aryans, the people entering the Indian subcontinent through Khyber Pass in ancient time. The sound of the radio is even noisy, giving another reference to the old man's miserable life. In this poem, poet explains the miserable life of his father. However, his dreaming of his ancestors and grandchildren gives the impression that he finds some solace in thinking about his past and future generation. It is an attempt to escape from his mundane routine life devoid of human contact. Again, his thought of the Aryans may indicate that he is thinking of how the society has changed since ancient times when they had come here. Now, this modern world has no place for the early people, has no one to think about their loneliness or care for them. Thus, the poem Father Returning Home by Dilip Chitre sympathizes with the old neglected people in our society. No doubt, his message is well delivered here. This poem has given the poet a lot of respect and popularity through all these years. Let us study some of the figures of speech from the poem. Paradox. In this figure of speech, two opposite ideas or two opposite words are used. Suburbs slide past his unseen eyes. The phrase unseen eyes is self contradictory. Personification. Suburbs slide past his unseen eyes. Suburbs are given the animate quality of sliding past. Transferred epithet. Epithet means adjective. In this figure of speech, adjective is transferred from one noun to another noun. Suburbs slide past his unseen eyes. The epithet unseen has been transferred from the poet to his eyes. fade homeward through the humid monsoon night. The epithet humid has been transferred from the weather to the night. Metaphor: his shirt and pants are soggy and his black raincoat. The black raincoat is indirectly compared to the blackness of the rainy day. His eyes dimmed by age. The eyes that fade homeward are indirectly compared to weariness. Alliteration: his eyes dimmed by age fade homeward through the humid monsoon night. The sound of H is repeated in the line for poetic effect. Simile: now I can see him getting off the train like a word dropped from a long sentence. The action of the father getting off from the crowded train is directly compared to a word being dropped from a long sentence with the use of the word like. Synecdoche. Example: home again, I see him drinking weak tea, eating a stale chapati, reading a book. Synecdoche means in this figure of speech, part is made to represent the whole. Here, chapati represents food. A few droplets cling to the graying hair on his wrist. The graying hair, as a part, represents the father, old age as a whole. Onomatopoeia: listening to the static on the radio, dreaming. The word static denotes, indicates the crackling or hissing sounds coming from the radio. Here, we discussed some of the figures of speech from this poem. Remaining, you will do it. In this video, we studied part 1 of Father Returning Home, and in part 2, we are going to study appreciation of this poem. Hope you understood this poem very well. Best luck for studies. Stay safe, stay healthy. My dear students, God bless you. Thank you.